Don't be tricked by this cheap hat. Behind it, there is excellent business sense. But keep in mind, Bernard is a small black child who shines shoes. He purposefully places his stall in front of the bank so that all of his clients are wealthy, white individuals. He doesn't give a damn about the little income he makes by polishing shoes. He takes his time so he may hear the financial trade secrets that white folks discuss as they wait. The little child would record it in a notebook as soon as they left. All he truly wants is the priceless financial advice he absorbed from them as a kid. He is aware that being a banker has been his lifetime ambition. This is Texas in 1939, a region that severely discriminates against black people. His father informs him that his goal is unachievable, but Bernard's eyes show determination against all odds. A few years later, he is now married and relocates to Los Angeles with his wife Elizabeth and their children. He chooses to launch his firm here since the racial discrimination is less severe than it is back home. His 3-person family is compelled to reside in one of his cousin's decrepit storage space. Bernard assures his wife they will soon move out. He begins by looking for residences for sale all across the city as a real estate agent. He notices with careful observation that although the white neighborhood in Los Angeles still has many unoccupied homes, the black community is overcrowded. Black individuals are financially capable and have renting demands, yet there is no market. This is a fantastic chance for those who want to speculate on and rent out real estate. He notices a white-owned apartment that is plainly in poor shape, with weeds growing on the front door, yet he nevertheless recognizes the benefit of the house's location being next to the black neighborhood. He approaches the landlord and asks, "Why don't you sell the flat to me since you've only rented out half of it? I will pay you $30,000 right now and another $5,000 when I rent out all of the rooms." The owner likes the concept, but doesn't want to take a chance, so Bernard says he understands. Before departing, he takes a quick check at the owner's calendar, which reveals that it is provided by a local bank manager, so an idea occurs to him. He bids farewell to the owner and proceeds immediately to the bank. He locates the manager who sent the calendar. The boss's secretary, who is discriminatory towards black people, denies to take him to the manager. He waits outside the bank for a few hours, and when the manager comes out, he instantly stops him. He says, "I know one of your VIP clients. My business will benefit both him and myself. I'm hoping you'll be able to approve a loan for me." Without any second thought, the bank manager rejects him. He gets a call from the owner that evening. The owner queries the man, "Did you attempt to get a loan using my identity?" He is forced to make an unexpected apology. The owner doesn't hold him responsible, but respects his will to persist until his goal is achieved. The owner agrees to guarantee the loan for him. He gets his first bank loan and buys the property. After just getting home from the store, an elderly white woman sees a black guy at her door. She snaps, "What are you doing?" "I'm repairing the apartment building," the black guy replies quietly. The elderly woman is speaking sourly, and "Workers like you should be careful." Bernard says, "Don't worry, this is my building, and I will absolutely take good care of it." Speechless, the elderly woman walks home angrily, and the cops arrive shortly after. They inform Bernard that an elderly woman phoned the police, then questioned him whether he claimed to be the owner, and unexpectedly contradicted her. Bernard obtains a copy of the real estate certificate. It turns out that he has anticipated difficulty and is prepared for it. When the cops found that the residence really belongs to him, they left in a fury. In the next scene, Bernard went back to the apartment complex that evening. When the elderly woman at the door spotted him, she told him to leave since it was not the right time for remodeling. Bernard continued to speak gently. "Now that I am the owner, I am no longer a remodeling worker." The elderly woman is perplexed, and a few days later she irately vacates the building because she doesn't want to share a residence with black people. After the elderly woman vacates, Bernard rents out her home to a black woman, and sure enough, the market for black tenants is enormous. The building fills up fast, as he had anticipated, and Bernard delivers the previous owner the agreed-upon follow-up payment. The previous owner really admires Bernard and offers to partner with him to launch a company. The former owner negotiates the deal and signs the contract in front of Bernard after he selects the home and determines his salary. White people will be unaware that they are conducting business with black people, and the income will be shared. Bernard easily acknowledges how well the two get along and how quickly they become extremely wealthy. Bernard, too, quickly moves from an apartment building to a mansion after creating a pleasant life for his cherished family. This is his wisdom. When someone treats him unfairly, he won't respond by punching back since it would put him in violation of other people's game rules. He wants to follow his own set of rules. His ultimate objectives are rational economics and maximum profit. However, difficulties might occur at any moment since life is not always easy. A few years later, the elderly and weak previous owner who worked with Bernard passes away abruptly. The company's stock is passed down to his wife, who has a history of blatant racism. She denies to work with Bernard and mockingly offers to purchase his shares at a very cheap price. If he refuses, she'll sue him. Which party do you think the judge would support? Bernard refuses to put up with the widow's unfair treatment, so he decides to go to court. In order to prove his cooperative relationship with the old owner, Bernard must find someone to testify in his favor. He considers the bank manager, but the manager has already sided with the widow and continues to avoid Bernard. Bernard is visibly dissatisfied. He stands inside the bank and observes the orderly and immaculate structure. He constantly observes discriminating fangs in action. When he enters the bank, he often receives scorn just because of the color of his skin. Bernard's mind begins to gradually form a wild idea as he thinks this. In one building, there are 4 banks, and each of them has barred entry to this black guy. Bernard had a brilliant idea at this very moment. I'll purchase this building and see who of you has the courage to discriminate me once again. In order to discuss his ideas, Bernard locates Joe, another black real estate entrepreneur in Los Angeles. Joe first believes Bernard is insane, since the land price for the building is so expensive, and no black person has ever purchased property in downtown Los Angeles. But after talking about it for a time, Joe realizes that Bernard is a thinking rationalist rather than a guy with delusions. Why does he want to purchase this structure? Because the bank there will service him as long as he owns the building. They dare not refuse to offer him a loan. In order for his real estate firm to run more smoothly, they will also inform him on the current real estate trend. Joe is surprised by his proposal, but after giving it some thought, he is certain that it will succeed. Despite his enormous wealth, he is still a target for white people everywhere. He will get more money if he can tread on white bankers on white land. However, they are still unable to do business directly with white people, necessitating the use of a white person as an agent. Bernard had a thought in mind already. He has been receiving renovation assistance from Matt. This man is trustworthy. He's a little inexperienced, but also highly ambitious. So Bernard and Joe set out to thoroughly train Matt, teaching him how to play golf, have elegant manners, think mathematically, and buy real estate. Matt exceeds expectations and develops his golfing skills fast. He can estimate real estate values while playing golf, exactly like a budding businessman at a golf club. Matt gets to know the building's owner. Obviously, Joe also set up this meeting, and the chat is excellent. The building is available for Matt to purchase, and the remaining terms will be discussed. Matt is assisted by Bernard in all of the preparations. He counts how many lights are on in the building after dark, determines the building's vacancy rate, and then estimates the property's worth using the yearly income and running expenses. Before meeting with the owner, Bernard prepares any numbers that may be necessary and instructs Matt to remember these figures. As a consequence, no matter how much the owner lies about his property, Matt is always one step ahead and tells him the actual figure, which surprises the owner. Alongside him, the accountant is likewise confused. They all believe they have come across a math genius and are completely incapable of tricking him. Bernard ultimately pays only $1.56 million for the building, which had originally been listed for more than $2.4 million. The president of each bank now comes to shake Bernard's hand whenever he enters or exits the premises. The small manager who previously gave him trouble is startled. The banking sector helped Bernard and Joe's real estate businesses grow quickly. Single-handedly, they defy the rigid zoning that enforces black and white segregation in Los Angeles. Young, talented black people often relocate to white neighborhoods. They are even greeted by the vice president shortly after. After a few years later, in 1963, Bernard travels back to Texas with his family to see his father, Britton. After their meal, Britton expresses his admiration for Bernard's achievements. The next day, Bernard takes his kid on a walk across the city. Before they realize it, they are in front of the bank where Bernard was a shoeshine boy. Texas was the nation's most racially divisive state at the time. They run upon a little child who is doing the same thing Bernard did when he was younger, polishing shoes. Bernard is shocked to learn that the youngster only polishes white people's shoes. This little occurrence affects Bernard and awakens in him a feeling of duty for his fellow man. He decides in secret that he must alter the current situation and help the black people in his hometown in obtaining better homes. The next day, Bernard comes to meet Joe and suggests that they purchase the Texas Mainland Bank. Joe believes Bernard is crazy to even think about it, because Texas has a very high rate of racism. But Bernard is able to convince Joe to assist him. Matt is rehired, and he serves as their frontman once again. To go through the deal's financials, they meet with Robert Florence, Sr. and Jr., the bank's owner. In spite of Florence Jr.'s concerns, Sr. trades the mainland bank for the bank by selling it to Matt and his associates. Bernard goes to work and begins supporting the local African Americans in getting their loan applications accepted. Bernard seems to want to provide his fellow men a fair opportunity at housing and perhaps employment prospects. For a while, everything seems to be going well until Florence Jr. begins looking into the loans that their bank grants. One day, Florence Jr. follows Matt and runs into Bernard and Joe. He questions them on the loans they granted and issues a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department as punishment. He tells that in a month, the agency will examine the bank's activities. The men discuss their future steps after Florence Jr. departs. Matt makes a recommendation during that moment. He recommends that they acquire a different bank and move the problematic debts from the mainland to that bank. They talked about buying Marlon Moore's bank. According to Bernard, controlling the bank's operations is the major issue. Matt responds by suggesting that he be given the opportunity to lead the new bank. Bernard says he doesn't like the idea, but ultimately he decides to let Eunice watch over Matt. In the end, Matt is able to manage his bank just as he desired. The next day, Matt meets with a lawyer and begins executing loan agreements under his direction. Later, Matt gets a call from Florence Jr. informing him that some of his customers want to withdraw all of their cash from the mainland. The situation worsens when a federal bank examiner approaches Marlon. Bernard compels himself into dressing as a janitor in order to help Matt, so he may come near throughout the meeting. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter since the examiner finds a serious issue with multiple loans. Bernard cannot believe that the ridiculous loans were ultimately granted. They discovered that Florence Jr. was responsible for it all along. It comes out that Matt ignored procedure in his hurry to run his bank and hired a lawyer that Florence suggested. Florence used it to smuggle the bad loans in. Later, Bernard and Joe advise Matt that leaving the Marlon Bank is the most sensible course of action. Matt takes action without telling his partners since he is unwilling to let his bank fail. The following day, Joe finds out about his move and hurries to the mainland bank with Bernard. They confront Matt about the debts here. Florence proudly observes the event as it unfolds. Matt is told by Bernard to grab their papers, but it's already too late. While leaving the office, federal bank inspectors come to suspend the mainland bank's license to operate. Joe and Bernard are detained by the FBI. Bernard makes an effort to hold his ground, but it is futile. Bernard and Joe meet with their lawyer later, and they find that their case has been dragged along with some racial politics in the nation. Meanwhile, Matt negotiates with Senator McClellan to testify against his partners in return for his release. That night, Matt rethinks about his next step and makes a phone call. The following day during the Senate hearing, Matt testifies against his partners by according to McClellan's advice. Later on in the day, Bernard meets with McClellan and hears his idea. He offers Bernard the choice to either accept an immunity agreement in exchange for confirming Matt's testimony, or to say anything he wants and risk going to prison. Bernard ultimately makes the choice to speak the things he has been holding in his heart for years. He discusses racial discrimination in the nation. Then, soon after the hearing, both Bernard and Joe's fortunes were destroyed. The two were also given federal jail sentences. Florence Jr. pays a little portion of what Bernard and Joe spent for the mainland bank and purchases it. Matt Steiner, however, was never charged with any crimes. Bernard and Joe are released from jail a few years later. Eunice thinks it odd that the two guys seem to be cheerful, even after they lost everything. It seems that is not at all the case. Joe says that they have villas in the Bahamas close to one another. Eunice asks Bernard how it occurred in shock. It turns out that Bernard was the person Matt phoned the evening before giving his testimony. Matt apologized to Bernard and informed him about the senator's deal. Bernard then asked Matt for a favor in exchange. The movie ends with the revelation that Bernard and Joe still own two mansions next to each other in the Bahamas. Their residential properties were crucial to the struggle against housing discrimination in Los Angeles before the government could take their assets. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.